Good afternoon. I have the honor of speaking to you after lunch. So if I hear any snoring, I want to thank Lyft and also eMachina for having me back 5 years ago. Actually, just seems like yesterday. This is one of the most special events, special conferences that I get to attend, so thank you. And as a gift, the team at eMachina is going to give away 10 copies of my new book to some of the most creative tweets as a result of this session. So let's get started. Now, nothing says experience like PowerPoint. Experience is a word that I believe needs a little bit more of understanding and definitely appreciation. And there's the experience that you design, and then there's the experience that people want. And I don't think that they're on the same path anymore. And in order to be relevant in the future, experience is not only the bridge to relationships, but I actually believe that the idea of experience architecture is the way to earn empathy and then to translate that empathy into innovation. And for many of us, we confuse iteration and innovation. And the difference is iteration is doing new things differently. Innovation is doing new things completely. And as a result, you get disruption, which is doing new things that make the old ones obsolete. So for the next, 25 minutes or so, I'd like to bring you on a journey of what I hope is not only experiential, but something that together we can innovate, leaving Lyft in ways that change the world. So what is an experience? This, believe it or not, is a difficult question to answer. Because if you ask 10 different people of what experience is, you're going to get maybe 15 answers. But if you close your eyes and if you think for a moment about that experience that you remember in your life, experience that changed your life, that inspired you to do something, that made you happy, that made you feel invincible, if you think about what it was that made you feel that way, that was the result of an incredible experience. And that is an experience, if we know we're going to have, that means you have to define it. You have to design it. And it's not just one thing, it's everything. An experience is an emotional reaction that you have in every moment. And it's what you do after you have that experience that matters. And so people will have experiences whether you design them or not. I actually believe that this is an opportunity, whereas putting technology aside, if we think about the experience at a sensory level, at an emotional level, I think that we can create some pretty amazing things and open the door to an entirely new generation of innovation that changes the entire concept and the entire construct of how organizations and people engage. And I was inspired by experiences by a poem that I had read by Maya Angelou that said, people will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And in an era where people are becoming what I call accidental narcissists, where they're the most important thing, and every app and network and every service is starting to remind them and condition them that they are the importance of everything, that they are the center of everything. Designing relevant experiences that are not based on our expectations, but instead based on their expectations, changes the entire game. And an experience becomes real once it's felt. We can talk about it, we can strategize, we can invest in all kinds of technology to scale, we can be as creative as we want to be, but if that experience isn't felt in the way that we intended once and throughout the customer lifecycle, then we failed. There was a very profound moment in my life by listening to the speech by an author named David Foster Wallace. And he told this story at the beginning of his speech about two fish swimming in a fishbowl. One said to the other, "Hey, how's the water?" And the other fish said, "Water? What are you talking about?" And I use this as a metaphor for how we think about experience, because we think about experience the way we know the world, not as the world is changing. And so we put ourselves in the way of designing meaningful experiences. And so as David Foster Wallace said, this is water. It's everything that you swim in. It's what you breathe that keeps you alive. And if this is water, but we take for granted that it is our ecosystem, then we actually miss how to be relevant in the ecosystem. Because you, as a human being, not as a strategist, not as a marketer, not as an executive, but as a human being, you go through life consciously deciding what has meaning to you and what doesn't. And then as a marketer or as a strategist or as an entrepreneur, you have a choice to design what will have meaning to someone else. And that's where this story begins. Because experiences are going to happen, again, whether they're designed or not. So what do we need to do to design memorable experiences? It's the little things. It's everything. It's every moment. And I'm sure you've watched documentaries or read books where they tell you the behind-the-scenes stories about, did you know that they did this in order to do that? And you'll say, oh my gosh, that is so fascinating. This is a picture of a cabin on a Disney cruise liner. And it looks like just a regular room. It has a couch, a bed, and a desk. But they decided to think about the little things, knowing that their user is most likely a group of people, a family, who just don't want to think about, oh, we have to get into this room and we're going to have to try to fit all of our stuff and where are we going to sleep? They want to deliver an exceptional experience in every moment that they're on that ship. So a bed comes out of the wall, the couch becomes a bed. All of these things now start to transform the room into something much more usable. They split the bathroom in two so that one person can use the toilet as the other person's taking a shower or brushing their teeth. They think about space in a way that becomes much more engaging. They also employ what's called forced perspective. Right? It's a design technique that many of you probably know, but for example, in the buildings at Disney parks, the bricks get smaller as they get taller. And this gives the appearance of making something look grander than it really is. But it's intentional. They want you to feel like a child looking up and believing that you are part of this greater experience. That's why they call it Imagineering, and I think that some of those principles, not just the user experience elements that lead to design, but the idea of making someone feel a way that changes them, that changes that moment, is spectacular. What you're looking at is the one visual that I found, and I scoured all over the web and all over the place to find the one image that I felt communicated experience. And it's this. She's wearing the magic band, and it's probably one of the most sophisticated pieces of technology that we've seen at the consumer level. It tracks her movement. It allows her to pay for food and souvenirs. It serves as her ticket to access rides. It serves as her hotel room key to let her open the door. And while some of you are thinking, that's very creepy, to her, it's just magical. It's just invisible. And it allows her to go through the park her way. And combined with the app, it really becomes her own personal experience. And what Disney does with that information is they build a better park. They change the queues for each of the rides. They change the entire experience of how you can order food. There's a restaurant there called Be Our Guest. And the restaurant knows, in proximity-wise, when she's getting close so that the wall can greet her when she shows up. It's personal. it's wonderful, it's thoughtful, it's intentional. But on the other extreme, maybe the opposite of Disney, is Amazon, this incredible logistics company that came out with the Amazon Echo, which is probably one of the most brilliant products I've seen that actually connects you more with a company that will send you more stuff simply by you talking to Alexa. And so the idea of delivering better experiences leads to innovation in products and services you didn't even think about. Most companies that I studied that invested in experience architecture also succeeded in inventing new products. But innovation isn't about technology. I will tell you that throughout the development of my work and experiences, and also my work in innovation, the one thing that's consistent is that innovation is actually a matter of perspective. The greatest innovation starts when you can see the world differently than the way you see the world today. And it's just a matter of perspective, right? In clever ways to learn about how information exists and also how information can be presented. The idea of a brand, the idea of a digital customer experience, all has to do with you simply trying to be more relevant, more engaging, more purposeful, right? And those are the foundation elements, the pillars, of which then allow you to innovate in the digital customer experience, right? But most of us think that technology is the answer to the digital customer experience, but it isn't. It's our perspective and how we see people and appreciate them for their differences in order to remind ourselves, not only is this water, but there's an entire world of which we can design differently. This picture, to me, symbolizes the challenge we all face, right? Some of the executives that we work with, or some of the people on our teams, will look at this picture and say, this is exactly what's wrong with the world today. Look at this. There's only one person in the front who's in the moment. Everyone else is on their phones. Why can't people put their phones down and be in the moment? And instead of seeing the world for what it is, they will just find the one thing that they can relate to, which then suddenly justifies all of the reasons why they don't want to change the experience. But I'd argue that everybody in this moment is living in that moment. They're just doing it differently. On one side, you have people who are sharing the moment while they take it in with the people that they're connected to. And I would also argue that to me as a brand, that's much more valuable because my experience is now scalable. And if you change perspective, you could say, look at this woman in the front. How selfish, not sharing this moment with all of her Facebook friends. They're all missing out because of her. So technology for some of us is the answer, but I promise for all of us it is not the answer. There are two different worlds that are existing, and the concept of the digital customer experience has to be personalized differently. Because if it doesn't, all we're doing is investing in new technology, but bounding them to the same standards, the same procedures, the same processes, the same metrics of success that don't actually lead us in any new direction. We're just doing things iteratively. So iteration versus innovation. So I ask you, in order to defeat cognitive bias, to see the world differently, to unlock true innovation, we have to actually see the world outside of ourselves, almost like an out-of-body experience. This is an art series where the photographer takes the phone out of people's hands in everyday scenarios, so you could see what a normal situation would look like without the phone. There is absolutely no reason I'm sharing this picture with you, other than to introduce the concept of what I call the ecosystem. The phone is a window to a new world, and it's my world, it's your world. And anything that doesn't compete for my attention where it is focused, if it minimizes that my attention is even focused there, there's no possibility for success. For executives to look at this and say, see, that's the problem with kids today. They just don't live life the way I grew up. If we're waiting for those executives to tell us what to do about the future, we're on the wrong side of innovation. That is, to them, the best party ever, and I bet you that they're telling each other that in that moment, because why talk to each other? But the concepts of which are changing how we use apps and what unlocks with apps, right? Some people think Tinder is a dating app, but those who use Tinder know it has nothing to do with dating. And for anybody else who has higher aspirations from Tinder, you're in the wrong app. This is the best cover of Wired magazine I've ever seen. Some of you know what that means. And some of you are wondering, why is he showing me emoji of pointing and okay? I'll explain it to you later. Just don't text that to me. But the digital customer experience starts at a behavioral level, right? And we can build from there understanding how to be meaningful. Because we look at our phones about 1,500 times a week. That adds up to about 177 minutes a day. We are rewiring our brains every time we swipe right, every time we order an Uber. All of these things now start to become the standard for how we want to be engaged. And simply having a mobile website or a mobile app is not the answer. It is what this is doing to your expectations, to your influence, to your decision making, to your aspirations, and to your values. That's where this story begins. When I thought about designing my book, I watched this video of a 1-year-old baby using an iPad perfectly. And her father was shooting this video, and he thought, oh, it would be funny if I give her a magazine and take the iPad away. So he gives her a magazine, and she starts crying. And then he says something like, Steve Jobs has forever changed the way my daughter's brain works, and it will always be a magazine is an iPad that doesn't work. So if you think about that, that is the representation of the intersection that we stand at as experience architects. On one side, some of us had to learn what an iPad is, and on the other side, someone has to learn what a magazine is. Yet we're designing the world, we're designing experiences based in a magazine legacy, right? What's old is just being adapted and iterated rather than innovated. And the whole idea of swiping left and pinching and zooming and having a car that comes to me or food that comes to me because I have an app for that, those are all changing our expectations for not just apps, but for the businesses that we work with. Think about banks, think about insurance, think about everything that you deal with if life was just this simple and this easy. And there are entire generations of people who expect this differently. So the digital customer experience has to start with an innovation in your perspective. You actually have to start challenging convention. You have to remember that this is water. You have to remember that everything that you do today is strictly because that's the way it has always been done. That's no longer good enough. That is a recipe that was said by no entrepreneur ever. Oh, we can't create this product. No one does it this way. This is how you change the world, and it starts by questioning everything. Why? Why do we have to do it that way? Why can't we do it this way, right? And it's all around you. Things that hold you back are all around us, like this. We click a 3.5-inch floppy diskette to save in 2016, right? So some of us know that that's a diskette. Some of you in this room think that that's a save icon. Same intersection of an iPad and a magazine, two different perspectives, yet we keep forcing younger generations to click a 3.5-inch diskette to save. That's absurd. And it plays out like this. Hey kid, have you ever seen one of these before? Oh, you 3D printed the save icon. No, it's a diskette. So we're already starting from a foundation of design based on legacy that's already outdated. like this. It's 2016, and your innovative television still ships with one of these things. And then your cable provider or your satellite provider or whatever set-top box you use, do you know that since the 1950s, these things refuse to be innovative? They keep just iterating. And remote controls, to me, are a metaphor for the digital customer experience. We just keep building upon a legacy that we know. Do you know that on average, the remote control has 70 buttons on it? That's ridiculous. In this world, having to navigate 70 buttons, right, the best we got is color coding and backlit keys and a dedicated Netflix button. Yay. Sucks. Or that it's taken us this long to figure out how to get something out of a bottle. Right? In fact, instead of saying we should redesign the bottle, we find ways to make the bottle work. Like, oh, if you just hold it at 45 degrees and tap it on the soft part of your hand, or if you get a knife, right? Rather than saying, what? That's stupid. We should just, there you go, gravity. Let gravity do the work. And so digital customer experience is this combination of some very amazing philosophies that exist, but that are happening throughout the organization, in pockets, not together. User experience plus customer experience plus brand experience should equal X. And that's how I came up with the name of my